Okay, this is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air for the first time with Alison David, singer musician. And welcome to the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast. How are you doing today?
Hello, do I call you Phantom?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, it's just like
Yeah.
the shirt.
Hello. Yeah. Hello, Phantom. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. It's 10 p.m. here in England, and it's Halloween, or Samhain, as the pagan tradition calls it.
Yeah, we got people coming. I'm in New Hampshire, and my daughter's handling the trick or treaters downstairs. I'm away from it, so you shouldn't hear it. But they get a little loud, but you shouldn't hear it. But yeah, thank you again for being on the show. We love to talk to people from around the world. We started the podcast talking to musicians back in 2016. We're actually at episode today 1004, and that's tracking
Wow,
on
that's
Apple Podcasts.
incredible.
And we want to let people know we've got your link there and that epearl.com and then F5XNT, but that will be fully clickable. When we're
Oh,
published,
wow.
the URL is clickable, so people will be able to click through and connect to you there. So maybe you can tell people just briefly, like if they click on your URL, what do they, how did, what happens when they connect with you that way?
Ooh, well, when they click on this URL, they'll receive a song. It's my signature song. It's called Dreams Come True. I'm known for my music by Alison David, without the love in the middle. And so, yeah, that's what they'll get. They'll get a download of my song, Dreams Come True, and then have access to my mailing list, which they could choose to stay on or not.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, that's
Yeah,
great. Great. I'm a big fan of singer songwriters, and I love to present new people or emerging or independent voices. So maybe you can give the folks out there a kind of brief story, your story. And talk about like who you are and your music, as an introduction, and then we can go from there.
Okay. Well, I have been a professional singer now for 28 or so years. Um, in fact, the song that you'll pick up is 22 years old. But I have been using my voice to uplift and connect people. So I was very much an independent original dance music artist for the beginning of my career. And and then I had some experiences where I lost my inspiration because of the people in the music industry and myself not being able to really say how I wanted everything to go. Um, I, I, yeah, I made. In fact, this very song, "Dreams Come True," that you can download with the URL, was my passionate song. You know, I've always been wanting to create inspiration in the world and inspire um, people to dare to live lives that they wanted to, that they dreamed of, or somewhere near that at least. And when I was younger and I had record deals, and um, I had got offered one with a solo with Mercury, and they had chose this song, "Dreams Come True," to work on, but they put it to some like dance music that I didn't really like, and I was like, okay, well, at least my message is gonna be put across. And then when it came to film the pop video, they I got to wear a corset because I just had a baby and I had big breasts, and it was the one and only time in my life when I got that privilege. And so I was quite excited on the day that I was filming it. But then the day that we were filming, they wanted me to mime, which is what you do for pop videos, to the song, but not with the passion with which I wrote it, to
Hmm.
deliver the message. I believe the dreams come true. I believe in fairy tales. I believe in you. And they wanted me to sing it more like a, yeah, 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 like this. So my
Oh,
experience in the music industry, that was at the a moment when I lost that, you know, they took this the soul out of the music for me, and then they took the soul out
yeah.
of my delivery, and I lost my message, and I lost my mojo. I lost my thrill for making music, um, and to put a message out, I started to question everything, that I was a hypocrite. That who am I to inspire anybody to do anything when I don't even have the courage to do things for myself? And spent some time doing some introspection, and slowly built my inner confidence over the 20 years, um, to be able to stand up and sing the same song with passion to an audience that receive it,
Wait,
to produce my own album, where I finally have the confidence to say to a producer or an engineer or a bass player, no, that's not how I want it to sound, and just keep
yeah,
working till I get what I want, instead of like, oh, how does it sound, or what do you think, and slowly just become
oh,
more myself on the outside that I am on the inside. And so, yeah, that's my musical journey. And when I lost my mojo, I stopped doing lots of original music and started singing covers. So I sing covers often, and it's still beautiful. I get people together, I make them all come together and start dancing and join up with the beautiful power of the unity of music. And yeah, that's also helped me build my confidence to, yeah, express my true voice in the world. And I'm so
is
passionate to see other people do that too.
well, I think what's really interesting is like when you're a singer-songwriter, you have your vision, you have your authentic vision. Sometimes you don't like if you're young and you're just into it, like you listen to the producers, you listen to the film directors, you listen to the people around you, and you maybe don't have the confidence to speak up. Like when I was 17 or 18, when I first started in music, like you defer to other people, right? Because
Mhm.
until you get the confidence to say, "Hey, this is my song. I know what I want." And
Yes.
as I got older, I decided like, "Hey, I want to build my bedroom studio, like which I'm in." And it's like I'm a keyboardist, and so like I have all my Moogs and Rolands and multi tracks, and I just put things together the way I want to because I used
Yeah.
to be in bands and things, and I used to write the songs, but I never sang them. And then I said, you know
Mhm.
what? I really have my own vision, and I'm just gonna, I invest in the equipment, invest in myself, and just put this stuff together. And I really, that's when I came up with the ghost. Is the idea, and I didn't do that like until I was like, oh no, back in 2016. So I'm 56 years old. I didn't really start taking my own voice serious as a musician till a lot later. And he would say, "Well, you're not, the way the game is, that's pretty. I'm pretty late in the game, but
It's
I
so
still
good.
felt like I had something to say. You want to say it the way you want to say it. I get what you're saying, the vision.
I hear that you do, and I like to encourage producers to sing their own songs. So often people say I can't sing, and actually they very much can. And what's deeper than that is I don't have the confidence in being seen or being heard, um, or I'm still bruised from whenever people told me I was rubbish back in the past. And I think when you said about your age, being 56, and how, like, what was that? What's quick maths? It was like 49 years old. Like at that time in your life, you decided, hang on a minute, I can do this. And there's something wonderful when a lot of my clients are our kind of age, because they think, well, hang on a minute. I've been living my life according to some standards that are not mine, and I want to make it count, and I want to make it something of value. And I think it's super important that we do that. And I'm so happy that you sang your own songs and that you stepped into your own ownership of your gifts and talents.
Well, I believe it's like what you say, when we're talking about the healing power of music. I feel that music is cathartic. Even before I started singing, I've been playing since I was 17. I've been writing like instrumentals, and I would be in bands and stuff, and write structures and write songs and give them to other people I felt could sing better than me.
Yeah,
And
I
then I
hear that.
said, like I decided to finally say, "Hey, you know what? If I'm ever gonna really try to have an impact, I actually have to sing the songs I'm writing.
I'm so
I've actually
glad.
gotta have my own stamp on it." Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think it's like it is cathartic to me because I just write all the time. I'm in my bedroom studio. I just continually write and write, and I do the podcast, and I just found ways to connect. but I believe the voice, and even the voice when you think about your muse. Like if when I'm playing on my piano, that's my voice through my piano. I'm playing through the keyboard, that's my voice.
Absolutely.
And it's like it's that vision you get. And I think it's like the open-mindedness you have as an artist to kind of just be in that flow state that I find I'm in a flow state and I just accept what the universe gives to me and then I kind of channel it. And I always found that like when I work with a lot of people, that kind of fusion kind of in the moment is usually for me works better than what I try to heavily construct. I if
Absolutely.
I go back and listen to the stuff that I kind of just came up with it, it feels more natural.
Absolutely. I love to catch this this wisdom. I mean, it's like you said, it's like it comes through you. I think this is true in many artistic forms, and just to catch it, which is where you have to have your recording devices on, right? When I'm with some of my clients, I'm recording them, especially if they're on Zoom, and sometimes I get them freestyling, but sometimes they're talking, and I'm writing as fast as I can whatever they're saying, because the wisdom comes through them, and it comes through their voice, but it may not. They might not notice it. So that's, you must have done the similar
Mm,
thing where you just press record and you put your content down, and then you look back at
yeah,
it and go, oh my gosh, there's some really good things in there. And it's the flow, like you say, it's the flow state, and allowing the flow state to come through is a big thing. I mean, it's amazing when you witness how much it transforms lives when they've allowed what is wanting to come through them. And the other thing that you mentioned about your voice being your keys, I sometimes use Van Gogh as a um, and as example. His voice is flavor of his art style. We all have our own way of making
yeah,
an impact. The voice, in terms of the throat chakra, is your chakra of manifestation. So it's the things that you bring into being, and that doesn't have to always be something you hear.
yeah. It's just like the vibe. A lot of times, like you feel like, I'm a sound designer. So it's like, what does that mean? I'm a synthesis. So I have all these big analog modes and I take waves, like sine waves, square waves, and I create my tones or
Yeah.
patches or pads from scratch because I,
Uh,
I start with like a sound painting, like the idea that sound can be a painting and I can spend all day on the kick and all day on a pad that I build from scratch to feel that vision I have for the song, and
I
then I'll
love
kind
that.
of let it once I create those tones and kicks and whatever sound effects I come up with, then I'll incorporate them. I'll just throw a multi-track, and I've got these multi-tracks that pick up whatever instruments are there, and then send them to separate tracks. So then I can just have like a live session with myself in a flow state, and then I'll go back and figure out what works. But it's kind of I was very much
Mm,
inspired by like Neil Young and Frank Zappa, and that they always had this concept like, well, why don't you just put it on record and just play it, and then
yeah.
then let it be, and then work on refining it. But if you like, you got to let it be. Don't keep on starting and stop, and just like let the expression happen, and then figure out what you how you can mine it.
I love it. We're on the same page. That's brilliant. It's absolutely, mine it is a good word. I love that. Yeah. And we're so lucky now as compared to what they had, because they had to cut tape up, but we just cut
Yeah,
and paste on our computers. So it makes it so possible. And I love that you play around with knobs, because that's ultimately what you do with sine waves, right? I mean, I guess they're all on your
yeah.
computer now, but have you got some
Well,
actual analog?
I have all these big analog Eurorack modular synths and tons of controls. I've got Moogs. If anybody's ever seen a Moog, like a mini Moog, you play the controls like on a Hammond organ. You're playing with the drawbars. The synthesizer is even bigger. Like you have like 40 something odd, based on whatever I'm doing. Some of them have multiple controls that you can
Ye
play in real time. Right, and so
Yeah.
in real time, it's like a point in time thing, right? So it's how somebody bends a note on a guitar, or if you're playing a horn, I learned how to play clarinets and how you trill or use your reed. There's a lot of control on these older synths, these analog synths, that
Yeah.
in the moment, you ever listen to Funkadelic, you can hear the level of control that Bernie Worrell had, but, like, the what you can do is really unbelievable, and you can kind of once you know what they do, the controls do, you can kinda express yourself in the moment, what you're feeling, and it becomes like a painting, like, at that time, it's like what you put down, and you can record it and sample it and reuse it and replay it, but it is kinda point in time, and I kinda love the fact that, in a world that's so digital and people wanna be so perfect, that I have these things that are kinda like what they are at the moment that they are. And I can
Mm.
construct them, but it is more in a field that's, like, very like, experimental. It's more
Mm.
experimental, it's more feel in how you felt at the moment that you
Yeah, I love
that you
that. I
got it.
love that. And funnily enough, I've been having a breakthrough in my own life experience recently. I've never been very I've hardly ever been comfortable freestyling with people. I went out with a rapper
Mhm.
once, and they used to have like freestyling sessions where you had to join in. You couldn't just be audience. And I have had a couple of bands where I've felt comfortable to let music come out, but the music had to be inspiring enough for something to come out of my mouth, and I had to feel safe and all of this stuff. And recently, I've had a breakthrough where I've noticed that I'm allowing myself to freestyle. It's only really happened in the car, and I sing to backing tracks a lot
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
my living. And I was in the car the other day, and I was playing these backing tracks, so I kind of had a sense of what um, the musical arrangement was, but I didn't remember the words, and I just started freestyling, and I realized that I've come to a certain point in my life where I'm not so self-conscious with myself, with anybody, like, because the person that would judge me first would be me, and so even
Yeah.
if there was no one around, it didn't necessarily give me the freedom to just see what came out of my mouth, and I realized I could freestyle. um, there's like words of wisdom and insight, and the universe, and meaningful things. And also I have a sense of humor that's quite base, like when I was talking about twiddling your knobs, that comes out.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and so, but as I was freestyling, I allowed my personality to come through my words, and also I allowed this sort of wisdom that you can channel, that just flows sometimes, to come out of my mouth. And the judgment part of me had stepped aside. And
Stepped
it's
away,
so
yeah.
interesting because most of us are carrying around the judgments that other people have given us, and it's like, when are we going to liberate ourselves? And I'm just so pleased that I'm starting to liberate this part of me. I think it would be amazing if I could just break into some wise and ridiculously silly insights, with musical tones. And oh, it's going to be a wonderful time. I'm very excited for this next phase in my freeing my true voice.
Well, it's very freeing when you get, because I was taught to read sheet music, and I was around people that wanted to do covers, but then I was really inspired. I'm a child of the '70s into punk and reggae and new wave, and I liked the fact that people could come into it and they weren't Marvin Gaye, and they weren't the Supremes. They didn't have to be perfect.
Hmm.
They could have a lot of heart. Like, you listen to Ramones or Talking Heads, people could like, hey, David Byrne, he's not the typical rock star, but he's coming at it he had a point of view, and it's very eclectic, very weird, very different. And I'm like, why can't you do that? And so
Yeah.
then, like, you could approach things, and you can take, from multiple genres. You can take from spoken word. You can take from folk. You can take from, like, Hendrixian or funk or heavy metal. You can cross genre and come up with all these, like, strange things that are more meaningful, because you're not trying to clone somebody else, right? You're not trying to just, "Oh, I just wanna play Zeppelin all the time." That was what all these guys, all they wanna do is play Zepp. All they wanna
Yeah.
do is play the Rolling Stones, and I'm like, "That's fine, but, like, why don't you wanna say something that's yours? Why
Yes.
don't you wanna feel something that's, like, your own?"
Interestingly enough, that one of the things that people that I work with and that I came across with myself is that being too diverse. So when I was working with record companies and they wanted me to to put myself in a sort of genre, in a place, and to be too diverse and too eclectic. It doesn't even work really with the algorithms on Spotify to have, I have on Spotify, I have a jazz trio album, I have a meditation with a mantra album, and then I have all the dance music stuff. So if people put me in a playlist, they're going to get so many different things, but it doesn't really work for the algorithms. And so,
Yeah.
but without thinking of the algorithms or anything like that, my true voice is eclectic. And it's wonderful that more and more now we're moving into eras where it's okay to be diverse. Even the word neurodivergent and divergent is a great word. And so many
Yeah.
of the people I work with, even, they have so many facets to themselves, and they want to bring it to the world, but that's also stopped them because they feel like they have too much or they are too much. But actually, there is a way to incorporate all that we are. And I think that each one of us who allows ourselves to be a mixture, to be, look at me, I'm mixed race, I'm a mixture. Like, there's so much mixing everywhere. Like, I did a DNA test the other day, and I'm more English than most of my white English friends. I'm like 43% English, and most of my white English friends are mixed, more than me, of other white things maybe, but still mixed. And so it's actually really natural. So this is one of the things I think that this movement of creatives will find a way to bring forward, like how it's okay to be a range, a spectrum of things. Like, there's even like more
Yeah.
spectrum in gender, there's like racial spectrum, like they're just,
Yeah.
well, this is the way we're going. And us pioneers, us creatives, we can stand for that, we can make it happen. And we'll need to find new language, because one of the reasons they have these categories is so that they can help define and bring clarity to whatever it is that they're talking about. And so there will be a need for a new way of communicating. And it's a bit like how when we talk about learning now, we've got the kinesthetic, and we've got the auditory, and we've got, I'm going to lose the other ones, but and then um, when you are on the neurodivergent spectrum, even if it's not like, yeah, considered mental illness or anything, there are different ways that people like to communicate. And
Yeah.
nowadays people are more open to the fact that there's a range of ways to communicate, so we can't all
Yeah, not one
learn the
way.
same
Yeah,
way.
same way. Yeah. Yeah, my daughter, she had to homeschooled because she's kinda in that neurodivergent issue, situation, and she didn't do well in the box kinda classroom. She liked the open she liked being able to have different time periods that she could do. She tends to work better at night. She's
Yeah.
an artist. She's a graphic artist. She does her work at, like, late at night, and so she needed, like, a school that was more advanced, that could handle that, and, she started her career in school. We lived in Japan. So right from the start, when we came back to the US, she had a different mindset. It was an Eastern mindset that didn't really go with the Western mindset. So she
Mm,
immediately was running into a wall because her first schooling, first development was in Japanese Eastern mindset schools in Tokyo.
mm,
And so when she
mhm.
came back, she didn't have that kind of back, but it gave her an advantage because she was able to kind of see both and embrace more Easter. But it's just that when you have these different types of people that need different approaches, some
Yeah,
people would like before they just leave people behind, and now
yeah.
you have to like realize like there's a lot of talent that people don't understand that like you're leaving people out that could really bring a lot of benefit to the world. And I think people
Exactly.
are starting to figure that out. Starting to
Exactly. And
figure it out.
that's right. And that's why Free Your True Voice is so important to me, because those people who have stepped down because they haven't fit into the box need to step up. And really, we can bring new insight and a new way to see the world and do life. And we can change the system, because and there's no denying. I don't think many people would deny that the system needs a change, because so many people
Oh
are
yeah.
scared or unhappy or worried right now. And like, so giving these, because when we're creatives, we have this flow that comes through us. It's like some people would call it the divine, or it's the
Yeah.
essence of all that is, or God or whatever. And like, so bringing that flow, that beautiful state of being into a lifestyle that more and more people live will change everything.
Yeah, it's why I started this podcast talking to creative people and primarily women I felt that weren't being paid attention to because there's like a boys club in music, and I was like, I wanted to allow emerging and independent female voices, and I still have that is more because I just find there's more women tend to be more embracing of things that are more open minded. And a lot of
Okay.
men tend to not do that. And so I just said I wanted to go toward people who were going in that direction. Not that I don't talk to men on my podcast, I do, but
Mhm.
I make choices about who I talk to. And
Yeah.
I talk to people who are kind of in this flow state, very expansive, not,
Mhm.
not people who have discovered they had self limitations. They discovered
Mhm.
they were kind of holding themselves back. And then they realized that they get this moment of epiphany and they start their own business. They create their own music. They become a director. They become a film director. They do an all. They create something. They're creators. I talk to creators,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I like the energy of that rather than people like who are haters. They just want to talk about
Yeah.
what they don't like. I want to talk to people
Yeah.
that I can come up with something that's unique and not just being critics. Because like I don't.
Yeah.
What do I need to talk to that person for?
Absolutely. And half of my clients are male and half are female. And I think it's interesting because um, when you're a minority, you're already out of the box. So in terms of being a female musician, for example, you're already a minority. So you can become accustomed to being out of the box and finding your way. But I mean, not all of my clients are musicians, but I really appreciate that I'm working with men as well because I think yeah, that they're allowing their sensitivity. The people that I'm working with are in touch, they're in touch with their male and their female side, and they're allowing their sensitivity to come through,
Yeah.
and that's the most wonderful experience to witness and be a part of.
Well, I think a lot of men deny themselves creativity because they don't embrace the feminine that's out there, right? Because a lot of times, if you look in the history of art, the feminine is like the driver of creativity because like it's a creation, and creation is kind of tied to female concepts. And so, if you're more in tune with the divine feminine, if you're more in tune with being open and not narrow minded, that you're willing to
Mm.
like embrace expansive things to not
Mm.
be just like holding on to some kind of real narrow lane and saying, "Well, it's only gonna be the canon." Because it tends to
Mhm,
like some
mhm.
people will come out and say, "It's gotta be in the canon. It's gotta be this is that or it's no good." Like why not embrace things that are outside the canon or influenced by multiple canons or some become something different. And that's where you have people who are like in the minority position, women, minorities, different ethnic groups that haven't had access. They have different approaches to things, and it's like to me like putting things out in the world where you can see the mosaic is so important to like not be like stifled by your own limitations.
Yes, absolutely. And when you are stifled, with coming back to the voice, it also has an effect on your health. So sometimes when I work with people, sometimes by activating their voice, they might liberate some pain that they're carrying, and also depression and things like that as well. Like it, the stifling is if you think of the word stifling, it's over the mouth, isn't it? It's stopping you from
Yeah.
communicating. And so, yeah, it feels super important that we activate this healing power that the voice has for all beings.
So the voice is so powerful, and like we've been talking about, that people are a lot of times they some people want to say, "Well, somebody else to stop me." It's like but it really most of the time when you uncover it, you stop yourself the most. most people, if they come to terms and they look in the looking glass, like who is actually stopping you? Like the person in the mirror is the one that's stopping you because you don't. I don't think it's good enough. I don't believe I deserve it, or I'm in a imposter syndrome. They don't feel that they really, you know, are are deserving of having a good life. And you're like, well, how do you free that? It seems like with your kind of vision is the creative vision of opening up that voice and not stifling, right? Maybe you can talk more about that.
Yeah, well, we are our worst critics. We're the ones who hate us the most. And yeah, so the way that we need to work through that is to first of all notice what we're doing, like notice how we shut ourselves down. um some of the ways I teach about that is you can tell a lot by the sounds that you restrict yourself from making. I'm talking about non-verbal sounds here, so whether it's sighs and yawns or coughs or pleasure sounds. You can get a lot of sense of how you shut yourself down with that. So noticing how we shut ourselves down and noticing, the other thing I talk about a lot is the power of our words. So, and I talk about bad spells, the bad spells like you can't sing, or I'm useless at this, so I'm no good at that, or oh, I never get, and oh, I haven't done enough, and when you actually have done quite a bit, and like so, helping people to pick out your voice is a good indicator of how you feel about yourself and how you feel maybe ashamed, but also how you be mean to yourself, like mainly that. And so, for example, um, when I do work with people who sing and the way they hate what they've done, and their judgment is just so oh, but it appears everywhere. So one has to start noticing when one uses bad spells, and then it's being kind to yourself. And being kind starts with changing, like treating ourselves like a child, like a child that we want to encourage. And but so that is a kindness kind of way of acting, thinking, and words, self-talk that becomes kinder. So even if we catch ourselves making a mistake, we don't need to berate ourselves, but we could just say, like if you were a really kind parent, you would say, oh, you made a mistake, well, next time hopefully we'll do better, but or whatever, well done, you gave it a go, next time I'm sure it will be better, or anything like well done for trying, or failing it's the only way to success, or whatever. And so, but being kind, and then the next thing is self-care, which is taking the kindness to another level, which is like really nourishing your human body and your life, and honoring the value of you as a person on this planet, and just finding ways to incorporate kindness in action. um, and all of these things just to encourage. It's like reparent, it is reparenting, it's like encouraging us, because most of most of the horrible things that we say to ourselves are regurgitations of things that we've heard and experienced in our past. So it's for us to do the work, and
Mhm.
sometimes that is actually big things like trauma healing, but also art, where you mentioned catharsis, is a great way of trauma healing. So bringing all the pain and stress and anger into your creative pursuits, or using passion to 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 flavor whatever you're creating, the way that also can be artfully turned and cultivated into some newness. Yeah, and so just like planet Earth takes all the bad stuff, all the dead stuff and the yucky stuff, and it turns it into fertile
Life.
soil and new life. Yeah, we can do that with ourselves.
That's what I find with like my in my art mode. Like I get into a quiet and try to get away from all the noise, and then I kind of let the muse kind of come into you. And there was a story where Jimi Hendrix, was famous for saying like he'd be in a session. He was doing all these sessions with like the Isley Brothers and stuff, and suddenly he would just go off the song and just do something very Hendrixian, which is his own style. And people said, "Where's that coming from? That's not the song." And he said, "Well, the universe gave it to me, and I couldn't not put it down." And he was like known for doing that, and he'd get fired. all the time. He's getting fired because like little Richard fired him and the Isley Brothers fired because he
Hang
would
on,
go off and do that.
I didn't know he played for the Isley Brothers. It's like
Yeah.
Summer Breeze, him. Now, 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 now. What did he actually? Are there any records with him playing with the
There are
Isley?
records. I actually have this thing called West Coast Seattle Boy, which is like Hendrix compilation of all his sideline gigs he played with Little Richard and the Isley Brothers. It's actually a collection that they put together because you'd have to go digging through the records to find them. So they actually had a big anthology called West Coast Seattle Boy. And
West
in
Coast.
that, they have the Isley Brothers songs, the Little Richard songs, the things where he played with them.
Writing
And you
it
can hear,
down.
yeah, you can hear it, hear his style, trying to conform to these bands, and in some places they like, it didn't. He was like trying to take them in his direction, but the whole idea is like he was willing to kind of hear the universe and let it. He didn't want to lose it, so he would put it on tape because, like, I don't want to lose that, but that kind of freedom to like know that you're a vessel, to know that you can channel, you're that open. You get people who are in that kind of mode that they're like, there's no mistake. It's actually I'm just like I'm in the present. And
Mm.
like Miles Davis playing with Herbie Hancock one time, and Herbie Hancock played the wrong chord, and he thought Miles was going to kill him. And then actually Miles just went and took that different arrangement, which was not expected, and changed the song in that moment. And then Herbie
Yeah.
said, "Well, that's I learned from that I can live in the present and not be so critical of myself because Miles saw that as an opportunity. He didn't see that as a mistake."
But that's
And
what
that's what
happens
helped.
when you're an
Yeah,
yeah, when you're an artist, that's often what happens, right? When you make a mistake and it takes you into an it's never a mistake, it's a diversion, and yeah.
new
What's the name
direction,
can
new
I just
direction.
ask, what's the name of that album, the Jimi Hendrix West Coast
Oh, West Coast Seattle Boy.
Seattle Boy?
It's a
Um,
anthology. It should be out there on almost. I think it's on a couple of the streaming services too. You could probably pick it up, but I got the hard
wicked,
copy.
wicked. Yeah, I love that, that what I notice when I'm working with my clients. So some of my clients, I was with one the other day, right? And she was talking to me. And while she was talking, I was writing it down. And then what we did is we found a piece of music and I played the piece of music, some instrumental music, and then I read back what she said to me. And, you know, it was deep and powerful. Um,
Mm,
and it's all there. That just if you just allow, that's what I love about this working with the voice. If you just allow it to
yeah,
have free, it's just a free form, free flow. The wisdom, like because a lot of my clients are not singing at all, but they have such wisdom and such insight to offer the world. And so just by giving themselves permission. Sometimes it's literally saying, "Yeah, I'm going to work with you," is enough permission for them to activate something that's been waiting to come out, and it just flows out when you give it permission. It's amazing.
yeah. People find it like they were in a 9 to 5. They get into therapy, then they discover they want to be a life coach, or they want to be a mentor, or they want to be
Yeah,
a therapist, and they realize the power of like the oral, like history or talking. Like it's kind of like we're on a podcast. People forget, like, you can read. There's a lot of great things from reading, but humans learn from this kind of oral learning, like taking, having a conversation, having a mentor that you can talk to back and forth and
mm,
being able to relay. That's why people do these master classes and, they want to hear these people tell their stories. And then
mhm,
they realize, well, I have a story. And then they
mhm,
realize, well, I could use a voice memo and start recording my ideas and oh, now I'm going to be, then they become authors or they become
yeah,
public speakers because they start to realize the power of their own voice and they start to not be as critical or self-limiting and saying, well, I can't be on that stage. I can't be on
yeah,
that TED talk stage. But guess what? You could if you actually start to realize that everybody has something to give to the world. And it's
yes,
not just for this A level person. They're not this like all these tiers. Like, everyone can contribute, and that you give yourself permission, then you can get powerful.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, and this is about giving ourselves permission and yeah, the layperson, the people on the street, we've got some good stuff to share and yeah, I can't wait to experience more people. And did you know though that the number one fear in the world is public speaking?
Yeah. I was one of those.
Wow, you totally overcome that and you took it to the other level where you're now like,
Yeah,
podcast 1,000, I don't know how many you said. Yeah, number
yeah.
1, fear, huh?
I was a kid when I was, like, in assembly in junior high. I was shaking so bad, I was supposed to give, like, read a poem, and I just couldn't do it. I just totally failed, and I couldn't sing in church. I could only, like, play keyboard. And then I said, "Well, I'm a musician. I'm just gonna play." So I realized I could. Then I started playing. I learned clarinet. I learned keyboards, and I got into that. I said, "Well, then I can present, but I didn't have to speak my voice." So I was
Mm,
using my artistic capability through my fingers or through being playing a wind instrument. And then eventually, what happened is I got cancer when I was 27. I had a sarcoma, and I survived it. And then I realized, like, why am I scared? If I can
mhm,
survive cancer, I could go do other
mm.
things. And then that's when I started to go out and read poetry at poetry slams. The guy
Ah,
that couldn't do it back when I was in, now then I started to evolve, and that's how I got to where I am. Where I faced that fear and I said, "Why was I scared?" And then I was like, "Well, I shouldn't be scared. If I could beat cancer, I shouldn't be scared of that."
that's beautiful. And do you know what another statistic I have? The number 1 most common life regret is that people wish that they had the courage to be true to themselves instead of being, shut down being by trying to be what other people expected of them. So that's a number one life regret apparently to wishing that they could have been true to themselves. And so yeah, I was going to ask you, and then you volunteered about the cancer that helped you to think, well, hang on a minute, I want to do something here that because you valued your life more, right? You suddenly realized the value of what your life could have for you if you were going to keep it.
Yeah, and then I didn't worry about what people thought. Because that's the big fear, I think, when I run into artists, like, they never wanna show you their vulnerability, even though, that's the nature of art. Because 'cause I'll go and ask somebody, like, "What's the song that you don't want anybody to hear?" And they wanna do
Yeah.
songs I think I wanna hear. It's like, I wanna hear the song you're scared to show anybody, because that's gonna show me who you really are, right? It's gonna show me, like, your vulnerability, and people will kinda
Yes.
hold on to that, because they don't wanna really show that, and then once in a while, they'll do it, but when they really embrace that vulnerability, they tend to really hit gold. And I think the people
It's
who
so
can
true.
do that and survive the result, and a lot of times people don't fully survive that result because it's hard, because you put yourself out there, then there are consequences, and it's how you deal with that is a whole whole 'nother talk, but that's another space.
Well, yeah, I have a Facebook group called Free Your True Voice, and we sometimes talk about those whole 'nother talks. I haven't had one for ages, but we used to do it every Wednesday, and anyone could come in to a chat on the Facebook group, and we'd bend ideas like this, the other ways that we could manage in a co-create the world where we free our voice. Because there's some things that I'm totally certain of, and there's others like, how are we going to do this? And so by just even discussing
Mm.
it, it's super useful to work out these new ways. That's why we have to stop hiding. We have to come out and dare to uh, push the edges and find safe places to do it, which is another thing I teach in my my program as well. It's like just finding safe
Yeah,
spaces. We can't just
very
come
important.
out and tell everybody what we feel right now. It might not work very well. And I love being vulnerable in safe spaces. But I actually have made Facebook safe for me. So I come out on my personal page and share some really vulnerable things. And as I allow that to happen, I just did it recently, and I was feeling ashamed because shame is the thing that stops us, right, from bringing the vulnerability
Yeah,
out. Um, but I did it anyway, and at that point things started to change. Like, and that's the beautiful. And then also I have a couple of clients. I can sometimes, mostly always, get them to at some point in their journey with me to make a mantra or a few, and often the mantras are like encouraging things and inspiring things. But what came up with a couple of my clients was grief, and they came up with words that were, same thing, mantra, but instead of mantra means training the mind, but it's not really that. But it was, like sad music is what sad people need to hear. You can't really make happy music. You can't plaster over a big giant gaping cut.
yeah,
And so they came up
yeah.
with some mantras that were really expressing their pain, which gave them the cathartic experience of being able to express their feelings. And also, it touched me so deep. And another thing that I was learning after this experience with grief, and how grief wants to be shared, and how we often stop ourselves from sharing the grief, that this word compassion means to suffer with. So vulnerability allows us for other people to have compassion and to relate, because one thing that connects us all, no matter where we come from, what gender we are, what um, all of that stuff, is that we all know what pain feels like. Yeah, we've all felt hurt emotionally. And so that's why we can actually connect in that sense of compassion, in that sense of humanity, no matter who that person is. If they've had their heart broken, if we don't agree on anything else, we can understand a bit of, we can have compassion for their broken heart because we know what that feels like.
Well, yeah, it's like kind of confessional nature of the singer-songwriter. Maybe if you get the height of that period from the late '60s into the, late '70s, early '80s, and it was just the vulnerability of people telling a story. The classic singer-songwriter that wrote the song, produced it, and put and performed it, and it became like, the James Taylor, like, "Seen Fire and Rain," and he went through a lot of addiction to get to those songs. He was in the middle of
Mm,
addiction, and he was a lot of
mm,
people understood the pain of it because it felt like it. And the strange thing for him is,
mm,
like, when he got happy, when he got married, and he didn't write songs like, well, obviously, Fire and Rain, he wrote some happy songs, and then people did his fans didn't like him. They liked his more they liked his songs when he was in the middle of his, like, chaos or in the middle of his crucible moment, and then it's like, well, how do you deal with that? Like, if you get known for the melancholy, if you get known for that kinda really
yeah,
heartfelt thing, and then suddenly you wanna become like, "Oh, I wanna be, like, jubilant. I wanna be happy," and then people are like, "Well, that doesn't feel right." For who they can they get a picture of you? And the problem is, like,
yeah,
that if you're 22 and you write your hit, and then you're 39, you're not in the same place you were when you're 22. It's like and people want you to still be the 22. A lot of times the
yeah,
fans will still want you to be 22, and it's like, they don't wanna deal with you being 39. That happened to Prince. Like, they wanted to be Purple Rain, and he wasn't
mm,
that all the time. He kept on shifting like Bowie, and they couldn't handle him shifting to different things. Even Bowie, they sometimes they didn't like his new persona. People either
mm.
liked it or they didn't, but, you know, he
This is
would switch and, like, lose our audience, and then, like, "Okay, I don't care if I lose it, that's where I am."
Yeah, this is the thing. When we were talking about the spectrum and the diversity that we are more and more embracing these days, so be it. Like, if we're going to lose an audience, we might gain another, and we might have to keep turning, and we can't stay in these narrow pathways unless it suits us. But for many of us, it's not the case. So yeah, we might attract different people to the first people. And for some people, like the ones who made hits in their pain and then they rectify their lives, maybe they'll end up being inspirational speakers and say how I
Yeah,
got there.
sure.
We're going to
Yeah,
have to be able to be in a state of flux in our lives as well, right? We can't stay attached
yeah,
to anything either. That's just how it's going to have to go.
yeah, you might have to flow with the flow state, which is like the flow state might not always keep you in the same position. And as
Yeah.
people make they make the mistake of thinking, "I'm gonna be happy because 'cause I'm always gonna do the thing I did that maybe gave you your greatest success." You know, like one of the my biggest successes, like, in business was I was in Tokyo for 2 years, and then I was always comparing, like, "Well, how come I can't do that again?" And then I had to start to just realize, like, I'm doing other things, and I can't just act like
Mm.
that's the zenith because there's other things where I've done that have done in a different way, a different zenith. It's a different point. And so a lot of times we kind of self-sabotage and saying, well, I got to hit this again, or I got to stay in this without embracing like the moment that you're in and seeing what's good about it and seeing that you're
Yeah.
actually doing something exceptional, but maybe it's different than what you did before.
Well, I was listening to somebody sent me a link of a Tony Robbins talk yesterday, and he was talking about this thing called a blueprint. And so we have these blueprints that are standards that we set for our lives that we want to meet. And I get from what he's saying that we like if you feel like a failure in a certain area in your life, it's because you've got a different blueprint to what you're living out. But actually you can change the blueprint and then you won't feel like a failure anymore. Obviously, that's the quick description of a big
Yeah, yeah,
process, but I can see how even listening to him last night, I was like, okay, maybe I could have another look at the thing that I feel unsatisfied about and think, why, because two people could be in the same situation and one thinks it's great or um, oh gosh, there was a word post traumatic. Instead of post-traumatic stress, there was post-traumatic progression or something, like, where you actually
yeah.
use that as a pivot to move you somewhere else, and, um, yeah,
It's like
so
the
imagine
lesson
that,
learned.
like
Yeah, I mean, it's
yeah,
a lesson learned. Maybe from your kind of crucible moment. Usually, you hit like something that's very tragic or it hurts or is pain involved. And an artist, what we tend to do is we take those dramatic things that happen and we turn it into art. And I feel it's very cathartic. If I take something like a pain point in my life and and you get a lot of passion about it, and then people can hear that it doesn't sound contrived, doesn't sound like you're trying to fake it. It doesn't sound like
mhm,
you're phoning it in, it sounds, like, authentic. Kinda like
mhm,
when you were talking about, like, in the video, you wanted to be authentic, and they kinda wanted you to do something that you felt was like, "Well, that's not authentically where I wanna be." And
mhm,
so when you're able to actually hit that authentic vibe that's
mhm,
happening at that moment, it just
mhm.
radiates in your work, and no matter what anybody thinks, like, it'll find an audience. People will feel it. There are people out there that will find it.
Absolutely, and when I coach people who do want to sing, often the thing that I encourage is that they put the feeling of the song in. If the two things that I use is connect to my audience and connect to the feeling of the song, and those two things take your ego out of the way, and actually your technique is not as important either because the technique, your body just pushes the message through. It brings the inspiration to the audience. You get out of the way, and then the technique and your ego in every way can step aside and just deliver the spirit of the music to the spirit of the audience. I sing all sorts of covers when I'm doing my day job or night job, and I transmit love, even whatever the song is, the feeling
Or
that
you
people
feel
have
it. You feel it. Yeah,
fed
you
back to me is this sense of love I had the most beautiful quote. I wish I had it now, but this guy was standing there and he just said he had the sense of me expressing this. I can't remember what it was, some beautiful connectedness, even though I might have been singing, I don't know, a punk song or whatever. It's like, that's not the point. The point is that
Still
I'm
feel it.
delivering the energy of communication and
Mhm.
oneness really in whatever I sing, even if it's like really angry or sad, or it's still coming through. There's so much in the non-physical, non-tangible realm that can be transmitted through us human beings, for all beings.
Well, yeah, it's that kind of art, it's the theater of music in itself. Like, if you every person, every singer that interprets a song and then does that on stage, it is kind of like an actor, like a method actor getting into that role, and then they take over. They have their interpretation of what that songwriter wrote, and it's how you do it at that moment, and it makes you uniquely yours. Like, you own that song for the moment you're singing it. You once you take it, it's your interpretation of what that original person wrote, but you're putting your emotion, your heart, your soul, your spirit, and you're vibing off the audience, you're vibing off the room, you're vibing off whatever you felt that day, and then what's in your subconscious. And so there's all this stuff that just comes out, and it makes it authentic. It makes it
Yeah,
you, and
and it
that's the creation.
momentary. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's momentary. I like you've talked about momentary, catching moments. That's what it is, isn't it? In that particular moment, that version of that song that you're putting through your body on that day with whatever's going on for you is so unique. Everything is unique in that moment. I mean, really enjoying talking to you. I reckon I could pick your brain about all the music that you know about, and then you're also very tuned into things energetic and um, the concept of union and connection and everything. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, it's one of the things I like after the cancer that I really wanted to kind of get in touch with like the universe, be like in touch with Gaia, be in touch with just the essence of everything around, and the inner and the outer, the microcosm, the macrocosm. I just started getting into a lot of things, and I realized it's like there's a lot of possibility. And when you like on the edge of something bad like cancer, and then you survive it, and then you say, you know what, I'm just happy every day I wake up, and I'm not going to get depressed because every moment I'm here is something else I could do. There's always
Wow.
something I can salvage, and it's a different mindset. Because I was around all these kids that were into the grunge, and they were into like the down, and I'm like, you guys don't know how bad it could get. Like you guys like got to really look at every day that you're here. You got a chance to do something. You got a chance to reassess everything and kind of go at it, or you could limit. You could be limiting, and it's like when you realize that you don't have to have the limitations,
Mm.
that you can open it up, and it's a hard thing to get to because the people stop themselves.
Yeah, I'd like to honor people who do feel suicidal right now, because you had the butt kick, the cancer butt kick, to give you value to life. But there are loads of people who really don't feel that they want to be alive, and I just want to bring some love into their space as well. I don't know if you have a sense of infinite.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
hard thing.
yeah, but so yeah, and sometimes that can be fixed by doing some daring to feel your feelings, daring to express your feelings, and daring to free your voice. But some people, their journey is so different. I'm so happy for you that you can find joyful reasons for being in every day. I also have more things than I could possibly fit into a lifetime that I could be inspired to do. And we are the lucky ones. And but again, if more of us were freeing our voices, and the people that the creatives were the ones who were actually shaping the world, maybe there'd be more people who would feel that they want to live. I remember the time that I felt suicidal last, which was quite a lot of years ago now. And it was literally thinking, if I remember thinking, I just wish I could get on a cloud above the sky,
above everything.
and but also kind of throw myself in front of a car. And but the reason why I wanted to why I felt like that was because I was felt like I was trying so hard to be someone I wasn't in the world, and that felt like such an effort.
Mhm.
That's the person I wanted to kill, I guess, was the faker that felt that that was all
Yeah,
I could be
yeah.
to survive, you know. And I'm so glad I've come
A lot of
so far
people
from there.
a lot of people are like they're in that cycle. You know, they do things where they're not in touch with their body, they're not in touch with their spirit or their soul. They feel isolated. It's like the idea in sociology, anomie, that you're disconnected. And society tends to create this anomie. The structures, because they're not being run by the creative people, it's being run by people who just want you to be in the box to fit their own purposes. So when you start to understand that, like, you don't have to be in that box. And sometimes, like, the society at a macro level might have put you in a box, but you also put yourself in a box. And so once you realize that you have the freedom to break out of the box, even though the macrocosm has a tendency to want to put people in boxes, you can still break out. It's like a lot of
Mhm.
people don't realize that, and they stay in the cycle because and they can't get out of it because they don't see a way out of it. And I get that, but it's like once you realize that you can break out of it, then you see the possibilities, and it's like they trying to get people into that place. They'll have more creatives realize teach people like mentors and people like yourself that have forums for people to talk. And talking is the best medicine in a lot of cases. They kind of talk something out that's hidden
Mm,
and bring it out
mm,
to the light. You know,
mm,
that'll solve
mm,
a lot.
mm. Yep. So finding those safe spaces, you know. So like my Facebook group is called Free Your True Voice, and that I like it to be a safe space. People are still quite shy, but what's wonderful about Facebook groups these days that you can actually post anonymously now in the groups.
Mm,
So you know, if somebody wanted to say something that they felt that they were a bit, I also do workshops, which is so
that's
beautiful.
really good.
I create a space where. Um, it's a very loving space. It works online. I've done some online workshops as well. And if I'm in a group where there's like double figures of 70 people or something like that, and they're all together, and I create a safe space, and we usually sing the space. We hold it with some singing, like a mantra of mine um, that
Mm,
allows for everyone to feel safe together. And then people come forward and speak out some really heart-wrenching things that they wouldn't normally share. And I'm looking forward to next year creating some kind of a group where that can happen, where people can stop hiding just basic things in a really safe container, and we can try out, oh my gosh, I'm not as odd as I thought I was, and this really edgy thing that I have that I'm hiding, I feel safe to share here. And this relief of release of not being alone and not struggling and holding things alone will just be so wonderful. Yeah, and it's wonderful if
that
anyone
sounds
gets.
yeah. That's very that to me is like that's the solution. People talking to each other, having safe spaces, feeling open enough to let the inner child kind of heal by bringing it out. Because a lot of times having that bringing back the possibilities of the adventure of a childhood where you don't realize you can't do it. When you can get back to the minds where you can get past the hurt and actually go back to like the childlike. That what I find with a lot of artists and creators is like we still have that childlike
Yeah.
possibility that we haven't been gotten to. We're jaded. We're not jaded. Where well, I can't do that. Well, like, 'cause everybody I know that's creative is like, well, why can't I do that? Well, like, I'm gonna do it. And when you can get people to realize it's not just about being creative, but to talk about their hurt and say that's possible. You can be in a space where you can talk about that hurt and you can get people aren't gonna shame you for it. People aren't gonna
Mm,
down you for it. You're actually gonna get
mm,
built up that people are gonna understand you, and then you're gonna hear stories that make you understand that, like, you're not alone, that there's lots of people who have these feelings, and it's not
mm.
that you're on odd person out. It's like there's a lot more people who are in that space than you think.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Mm.
Well, thank you again for being on the show. We always hit the hour that we usually set ourselves for faster than we ever believe we could, and it was great to have you on the program. Again, this was live on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch, and it's going to be on all the major podcast platforms that we're available on by tomorrow. And I thank you again for being on the show. A reminder that you can click that URL that we have there and get connected to you directly once we're published. And I encourage everyone to actually click on the URL so they can directly dive into more about what we've been talking about from your perspective. And I do encourage people to click the links of the guests that we have on the show.
Oh, thank you. It's been absolutely a pleasure to spend time with you. And I hope that the listeners, you have value and find value and inspiration from what we've discussed today.
And thank you. Have a good night.
Bye bye.